Picture a river valley in northern Spain, 400,000 years ago. You are crouched by a stream with 6 other people. One of them freezes. She has seen something in the tree line. A cave lion, maybe 80 kilograms of it. She needs to tell you right now. She cannot say lion. The word does not exist. Nobody in her world has ever said a word. So what does she do? She does something. That much we know from the fact you exist. Her group survived long enough to become your ancestors. The question of what she actually did has occupied researchers for a century, and the answers are stranger than most people assume. Start with the problem that makes this so hard. Speech leaves nothing behind. Lungs, tongue, vocal folds, all of it is soft tissue. It rots within weeks of death. There is no fossil of a sentence. So researchers work with 3 kinds of evidence instead. Bones that show what a throat and an ear could do. Tools that show what a mind could plan. And living relatives who still communicate the older way. Chimpanzees and bonobos split from our line around 7 million years ago. Whatever they and we still share was probably there at the split. That gives us a floor to build from. Start with the hands, because the hands came first. Catherine Hobader and Richard Burns spent years in Budongo Forest, Uganda. They filmed wild chimpanzees and cataloged every gesture they made. They found 66 distinct gestures with reliable meanings. A touch on the back means climb on. An arm raise means take this from me. A leaf clipped loudly between the teeth is a sexual invitation. The chimps use them deliberately and wait for a response. If the response is wrong, they repeat it. Then they switch to a different gesture entirely. They keep pushing toward a goal. Communication runs on exactly that. In 2024, a team at St. Andrews tested this on human children. Toddlers age 1 and 2 were shown chimpanzee and bonobo gestures. The children understood the meaning of over 50 of them. Nobody taught them. The vocabulary was already in there. So a shared gestural system predates the human line completely. Now look at a piece of anatomy nobody notices. The visible whites of your eyes. In 1997, Hiromi Kobayashi and Shiro Koshima compared the eyes of 92 primate species at Tokyo Institute of Technology. Humans were the only one with a bright white sclera, surrounding a dark iris with a wide horizontal eye shape. Chimpanzee eyes are dark, and their gaze direction is hard to read. Ours broadcasted across a room. You can tell where a stranger is looking from 10 meters away. Follow that gaze and you learn what they noticed. That single feature turns looking into a signal you can send. Point at the same time and you have a 2-part message. Human infants start pointing at things around 12 months old. They point to share attention with nothing to gain from it. Chimpanzees raised by humans learn to point at food they want. They almost never point at something simply to show you. That gap is small on paper and enormous in practice. So when did sound get added? The first hard evidence comes from a bone shaped like a horseshoe. The hyoid sits in your throat and anchors the tongue muscles. It touches no other bone, so it rarely survives. In 1983, at Kibara Cave in Israel, excavators found one. It belonged to a Neanderthal man buried around 60,000 years ago. The bone was almost indistinguishable from yours. Then at Cima de los Huesos in northern Spain, researchers recovered hyoids from Homo heidelbergensis. Those are dated to 430,000 years old. Same modern shape. The throat hardware was in place. A hyoid alone does not prove speech, and critics said so immediately. So the argument moved to the ear. In 2021, Mercedes Conde Valverde and her team at Alcala University built CT models of Neanderthal ear bones from Atapuerca. They calculated how those ears transmitted sound. Neanderthal hearing peaked between 4 and 5 kilohertz. That band carries consonants, the fast clicks and hisses of speech. Chimpanzee ears do not favor that range, and human ears do. Neanderthal ears did as well. Something was being said. There is a third clue in the spine. Talking requires you to control your breath in tiny increments. You exhale for 8 seconds while adjusting pressure hundreds of times. Chimpanzees cannot do that, which limits their calls to short bursts. That control runs through nerves in the thoracic vertebrae. Mark Meyer measured the canals those nerves pass through. In Homo erectus at Nariokotomé, Kenya, dated 1.5 million years, the canal was narrow, closer to a chimpanzee than to you. By the Neanderthals, it had widened to the modern range. Breath control arrived somewhere in that gap. Before words, sound still carried real information. In 1980, Robert Seafarth and Dorothy Cheney published a study from Amboseli, Kenya. They played recordings of vervet monkey alarm calls through hidden speakers. The leopard call sent monkeys straight up the nearest tree. The eagle call sent them looking upward, then into thick bush. The snake call made them stand and scan the grass. 3 sounds, 3 specific meanings in an animal with no language. Young vervets get it wrong at first and improve with practice. They learn the vocabulary from adults. Then there is laughter, which runs deeper than most people guess. In 2009, Marina Davila Ross recorded tickling sessions with human infants, chimpanzees, gorillas, orangutans, and bonobos. She mapped the acoustic structure of every sound they made. The results match the known family tree almost exactly. Laughter descends from a common ancestor roughly 16 million years back. It says, "This is play, nobody here is fighting," a group that can signal that can wrestle without bloodshed. Rhythm did similar work. Wild chimpanzees drum on the buttress roots of trees. The sound travels over a kilometer through dense forest. In 2022, Vesta Eleutheri analyzed drumming in Budongo forest. Individual males had recognizable rhythms, consistent across years. Other chimps could tell who was drumming and roughly where. A name and a location sent through wood. Stephen Mithen argues early humans went further than that. His model has them singing before they spoke. Long melodic phrases carrying emotion and intent without separate words. Mothers still do a version of it with infants. The rising and falling pitch calms a baby who understands nothing. That works in every language ever tested. Now the strongest evidence, which comes from stone. At Kokosile in Kenya, archaeologists found handaxes. They date to 1.76 million years ago. Making one takes around 30 minutes and a long sequence of decisions. You strike a core at a precise angle to detach a flake. Get the angle wrong and the whole piece shatters. Nobody works that out alone in one lifetime. Dietrich Stout at Emory University tested how people learn it. He trained volunteers in stone knapping and scanned their brains. The skill activated regions overlapping Broca's area. That patch of the left frontal lobe handles grammar and speaking humans. Learners who received verbal instruction improved faster than those who only watched. Toolmaking and sentence building appear to share circuitry. There is a puzzle inside that, though. The handaxe design barely changed for over 1 million years. From Kenya to Spain to India, the same teardrop shape. A culture with full language does not stay frozen that long. So teaching probably happened by demonstration, with correction, and very few words. A child watches an adult for hours and copies the grip. The adult takes the stone back and shows the strike again. That loop transmits a skill across 300,000 generations. Then, around 300,000 years ago, the toolmaking changes. The Levallois method appears across Africa and the Near East. You prepare a core in advance, shaping the surface first, then remove one flake whose final form was decided before you started. That requires holding a plan through 8 or 9 steps. The same ability underwrites a sentence with clauses in it. Objects begin to carry meaning around the same time. In 2021, a team reported shell beads from Bismoon Cave in Morocco. 33 sea snail shells, pierced, worn smooth by a cord. Dated to at least 142,000 years. Those shells came from a coast some 40 kilometers away. Somebody carried them inland, drilled them, and wore them on the body. A bead does nothing practical. It only tells other people something. Who you are, which group you belong to, who you married. That message works on a stranger you have never spoken to. At Blombos Cave in South Africa, the evidence gets sharper. A block of red ochre, 77,000 years old, carries a deliberate crosshatch pattern cut with a stone point. In 2018, Christopher Henshillwood's team published a stone flake from the same cave. Someone had drawn on it with an ochre crayon. That flake is 73,000 years old. The lines continue past the broken edge. The original drawing was larger than the surviving fragment. 60 kilometers north at Deep Kloof Rock Shelter, excavators recovered ostrich eggshell water flasks from about 60,000 years ago. Hundreds of fragments engraved with hatch bands and parallel lines. The patterns shift over the centuries, the way styles do. Different groups marked their containers differently, and the marks change with fashion. Then the hands appear on the walls. At Maltravieso in Spain, a hand stencil dates to 66,000 years. That predates modern humans in Europe, which points to Neanderthals. At Liang Tedonge on Sulawesi, someone painted a warty pig. The date runs past 45,000 years ago. The method for a stencil is identical everywhere. Hold your hand flat, take pigment into your mouth, and blow it hard across the back of the hand. The wall keeps the outline after you walk away. Someone left that message for a person who was not present. One skeleton pulls all of this together. Shanidar I was excavated in the Zagros Mountains of Iraq in 1957. He was a Neanderthal man who died around 45,000 years ago. His right arm was withered and amputated below the elbow. A crushing blow to the left side of his face blinded that eye. Bone growths had blocked his right ear canal. He was probably deaf on that side, possibly both. The injuries healed, which means he lived for years afterwards. A half-blind, one-armed man kept up with a mobile group. Somebody fed him. Somebody kept track of where he was. Somebody worked out how to reach him without sound. The care itself records a working communication system. Here is what all of it adds up to. There was never a morning when language switched on. The pieces arrived separately over 2 million years. Gesture came first, inherited from an ancestor we share with chimpanzees. Gaze and pointing made attention itself shareable. Breath control and hearing tuned to consonants arrived with Homo erectus and later. Teaching by demonstration built the mental machinery for ordered sequences. Beads and pigment moved meaning onto objects that outlast a conversation. Words landed last into a system already carrying most of the load. We know that system can rebuild itself from nothing. In 1977, Nicaragua opened its first school for deaf children. Around 50 students arrived with no shared language at all. The teachers tried to teach lip reading in Spanish, and it failed. On the playground, the children invented something instead. Within a few years, it had consistent word order and grammar. Judy Kegel was brought in to document what happened. The younger children made it more regular than the first group. Nobody designed it. It grew out of a need to be understood. That need is older than every word you have ever used. The woman in the Spanish Valley did not need vocabulary. She had a hand, a face, a voice with a rising edge, and 6 people who had watched her for their whole lives. The group ran for the trees. Everything else came later.